Hey there. Let's talk a little bit about e-readers. I wasn't really much of an e-reader until about 2022. And I realize it sounds funny because I've got like 1,000 books, I think maybe more between my books and my partner's. But that year, after sort of flirting with it for a little while, about a decade before with a Nook, I thought I'd make a leap into the Kindle space, and I picked up one on Prime Day, a Kindle Paperwhite, which everyone said was like sort of the gold standard at the time. Got it for a good price, and I really enjoyed it. I took it with me on vacations anytime I went out of town. It was great for airplanes, and there's just a lot of sort of convenience to e-readers. I understand why someone would prefer a physical book, both as an object and as something that feels like I've got it in my hand. I own it. I don't have to license this thing in the way that like Amazon always warns you when you're buying a book. And there's a feeling of accomplishment too when you've got to those last couple pages and the back is suddenly weighing a whole lot less than the front. I get that. My partner's that way. She prefers physical books too. But I guess if you're like me at all, there's two factors that might make an e-reader a little more appealing. One is how a Kindle is adaptable to you and your potentially worsening eyes. As I'm getting older, my eyes are getting worse, I'm sad to say. And I don't always go to the optometrist to get my new prescription. But these e-readers, they're adaptable to you. So you can change the font style, the font size, and there is also sort of this great sort of captured screen effect that I think is just a little more comfortable for the reader, especially if you can make your screen a little brighter and the like. That captured effect too helps me in that sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed by a book, even if it's something kind of short, because you've got all the text on the page you're reading and then the text on the next page, and then you start thinking about what's on the next page and the next page and the next page. My brain kind of gets a little scrambled sometimes. I don't know, maybe it's an attention deficit thing that's undiagnosed, hard to say. But then I start thinking about, oh, what are the dogs doing? Oh, what's on my phone? Oh, maybe I hear that show in the background. I wonder what that is. Oh, what's happening outside? And my focus is not where it needs to be, which is on the pages of that book. With the Kindle, those distractions are still there, but at the very least, when I have just the one wall of text in a very small 7-inch screen, that is something that I can center in on a little better. And if you're anything like me at all, perhaps that could be beneficial to you. So all that to say, I've become an e-reader convert, and I really have enjoyed my Kindle Paperwhite, but a few weeks ago, because it was my birthday and I have an amazing partner, she got me a Kindle Colorsoft. In this case, it only comes in black. But so yeah, that's why it looks kind of jade. But she got me a Kindle Colorsoft, which was not something that I necessarily was going to buy for myself because I like my Paperwhite. But I am kind of a comics reader, so the idea of having a Kindle that I could actually read my comics on that have like vibrant color and I can enjoy that color, that was a really appealing notion, especially because my iPad is now being used as a television in our dining room, and I don't really have an option to read any of my digital library anymore. So this was a perfect solution. So I thought I'd compare the two if you are sort of in the same situation I'm in where you're looking to either buy a Kindle or you're thinking, oh, I wonder if I should upgrade because now they have their first ever color version of the Kindle that isn't like the Kindle Fire. It's an actual e-reader with e-ink and color e-ink, and I think I could benefit from some of that additional vibrancy. Let's talk a little bit about some of the physicals around it, and let's talk about some of the specs, and then just the experience of reading itself. I'd like to be able to show you these things side by side, but like they're in cases and I don't want to take them out because it's kind of a bear to take them out. And it just, I'm doing this out of my own convenience, sorry. But the Kindle Colorwhite, the Kindle, the Kindle Paperwhite comes in 3 different colors. It does not come in jellyfish, but it does come in black, jade, and raspberry currently. Whereas the Kindle Colorsoft strangely, is only in black. If I took this out, this would just be a black Kindle anyway, so it wouldn't be that different. But there is sort of a weight differential that's important to note. So the Kindle Paperwhite does weigh less, and were I to take it out of this case, and I'll just at least pop it open so we can look at it here, it does just feel a little, maybe like a little more plasticky, maybe a little more cheaper, which makes sense because it is a cheaper device. In addition, this is a smaller screen. This is about a 6.8-inch screen. This is like the 2022 version, so it's not the newest version of the Paperwhite, which also makes this an upgrade for me personally, but you can get a Paperwhite now with a 7-inch screen. Whereas the Colorsoft is just a little chunkier, you know, it's a little heavier, maybe like by an ounce, but it's just kind of nice to feel that additional weight. It just feels like the tech just, it's more heavy duty, and it's just an aesthetics thing. It's just a personal thing, but I like to feel a little more weight in my fingers, especially when I'm reading a book, which are typically kind of heavy. And in addition, the screen is of course bigger, and that is very appealing too. Insofar as specs, the Colorsoft and the Paperwhite are both presented at about 300 pixels per inch in monochrome. But when you utilize color in the Colorsoft, it drops down to about 150 pixels per inch. That doesn't really make that much of a noticeable difference. I will say if you were to read something in color on the Colorsoft, let's just say you're gonna read a comic book, and I'll put up an example here on screen. It's a little bit of a paler color than you're probably used to, certainly if you're comparing it to print, or if you're comparing it to like reading it on the iPad or something where it's just gonna be a lot brighter and a little punchier. But it does at least look better than the monochrome presentation that would be in a Kindle Paperwhite or an earlier Kindle generation. Now with that color layer on the Colorsoft, it's important to note that there is a dulling effect, so that even when the Paperwhite and the Colorsoft are set on the exact same brightness level and the exact same warmth level, the Colorsoft still appears dimmer. And I set this in a couple of different ways, as you'll see in the pictures. One where the warmth level is turned up fairly high, and then one where the warmth level is turned down to the lowest setting possible. Even then, the Paperwhite still just has a greater clarity. And I think this will become more apparent, especially if you read like I do in a dark room. And it's kind of like the easiest way to read when everyone else is trying to sleep. You'll find that you're going to have to crank the brightness on the Colorsoft a little higher than you would your Paperwhite, which is really one plus in the Paperwhite's column. If you're going to buy a Colorsoft, the reason you're going to buy it is because you're looking for color in your books, and that could be like, I want color covers if you're kind of OCD and picky about it like I am, or it could be that you are a comics reader and you want to be able to read your comics on the same device that you read your prose books. And who wants to have multiple devices for different types of reading experiences? I've done that for years, and it's kind of obnoxious to be carrying around a lot of different tablets. So it's nice to have something that's like all in one like this. So I wanted to show you really quickly what color looks like on the Colorsoft, and I'll pick, of course, I'm gonna pick color. I'm gonna pick like the darkest comic I can imagine, which is Hellboy. And as you can see, this is one of the opening pages from Seed of Destruction, which is like the first volume of Hellboy. It looks pretty good, right? Like this is on the vivid mode, which is supposed to bring out more saturation in the colors. I don't really know if that's true or not. I've switched between the two, standard and vivid, and to me they look kind of the same. But the best way to look at it, of course, is if I do that number and it goes into guided view, and you can see panel by panel, a little more detail, that really nice Mignola art, it's really nice. And when you compare it side by side, which I'm going to do in a side-by-side picture here in like 2 seconds, that on the Paperwhite, it just doesn't really compare. I mean, you can read a comic in black and white, but it's not necessarily going to be like the way it's supposed to be read if there was color already, sort of, if it was like drawn and written for color. That is like an important part of the experience. Otherwise, you're basically reading, you know, the Fantagraphics version of Hellboy, I guess. Beyond comics, is color beneficial with the Colorsoft? Sure. I mean, if you're trying to buy books for kids, you know, there's obviously a lot of art that is lost in black and white, so that's important. I think cookbooks, I don't know many people that read cookbooks on their Kindles, but I'm sure there's an audience for it. You can certainly buy them that way. Those color images help a lot. And anything with like a lot of maps and art kind of in the end papers, I think could be beneficial from that too. Or, like I said, if you just really want those color covers to pop, let's see if we can show an example of those too. You can kind of see it just looks a little more exciting. You've got a few different covers here, and they do show up pretty nicely. And it's nice to like be able to like close it and open it up and see like the color cover of something you're reading. It just simulates the reading of a book better than the standard Kindle Paperwhite does. In terms of storage, the Colorsoft comes in at about 32 gigs with the Paperwhite. My Paperwhite was 8 gigs. Now I think it's available in 16 gigs. Or I just bought the cheaper version for some reason. I guess it was like dipping my toes into the water rather than going full on. I don't know that you really need that much space, to be honest, unless you just like one of these people that just like loads up tons of books and reads like voluminously on a trip or during the course of your day. And you know, those people exist. But most books take up so little storage capacity. It's really more intended for stuff with like a lot of like high contrast images and bigger file sizes. Comics do fall under that. I think the average comic EPUB file is, gosh, I want to say it's about 300 megs, maybe 400 megs, while most prose books are a fraction of that. But this is a big one, and that's battery life differences. So on this measurement of if you read 30 minutes per day, the Kindle Paperwhite is expected to last about 12 weeks in terms of its battery. The Colorsoft only has about 8 weeks. And that makes sense. I mean, there's more demand on the Colorsoft's processor because of those color images, and there's just kind of more going on behind the scenes in that machine. But and this gets back to sort of that dullness factor I talked about, because you have to crank the battery up, or excuse me, crank the brightness up a little bit, that does take a little bit more of a drain on the battery. It's always that brightness that's going to, it's like your brightness and your internet connection are like the two things that drain your battery the most in a Kindle, in my experience. And because you have to bring the brightness up, your battery's going to suffer. I will say too, yesterday, just in a sort of real world test of things, I was downloading something on my Colorsoft and I left the Wi-Fi on. I usually keep it in airplane mode because I know that that's gonna be the thing that like I'll come back and my battery will be like halfway gone. But I just had left it on yesterday just to kind of play with it. I downloaded something and I came back, it was still in standby mode. I came back, opened it up, and it went from about 73% to about 68%, which that was the biggest drain I've seen so far in the last few weeks. It's just something to keep in mind. As always, with any Kindle, keep it on airplane mode unless you need to download something, unless you need to purchase something, or if you're using WhisperSync with your Audible device. In terms of overall features, there's not a lot of difference between the Paperwhite and the Colorsoft. You can highlight in different colors in the Colorsoft, which for people who like to take notes in their books or to highlight certain passages, that's something that might be a big draw. I've never been that kind of person. I've never written in a book in my life and certainly never highlighted a passage, though I do enjoy seeing other people's highlights. It's just not something for me, but if you're into that, those different colors might be like kind of a fun little tool and toy for you to play with. But generally, the reading experiences are pretty much the same. For prose works, You have the same fonts, you have the same layouts. Really nothing has changed on that end. The biggest differential, I think, is that in the Kindle Paperwhite, there is a thing called dark mode, which is when you're trying to go to sleep or about to and you're reading at night, you have a thing on your screen and brightness setting. It says light mode to dark mode. So it just reverses everything. Your phone can do the same thing, but this kind of allows you the opportunity to have sort of a less eye straining experience before going to bed at night. And also it kind of darkens the Kindle up just a little bit more in case you've got somebody next to you who's trying to sleep and you don't have this big night light right in their face. On the Colorsoft, it's not called that. Like, there is no dark mode. Instead, what you have available to you, and I'll just show you an example here from this copy of something I'll be talking about perhaps next week. You'll go into, it's not in the settings menu anymore. It's actually in the font menu, and it's called page color. So you swap over and boom, look at that. It reverses, negative, yay. All that to say, it's effectively the same thing. There is one other sort of feature difference, and it's called auto brightness. Both Kindles have sort of an auto warmth setting that you can schedule, but the Colorsoft added something called auto brightness. At least that wasn't native to my Paperwhite, this earlier generation. And you know, I haven't gotten it to work yet. It's supposed to react to this, to sort of the environment around you, and it's supposed to like auto dim and auto lighten when you need it, but it doesn't seem to work that well consistently, so I kind of don't use it, and I just end up using the sliders instead. Yeah, otherwise, the Colorsoft, I think, is a smoother moving piece of software. But again, that could be because I'm just working with like an older Kindle on the other side. And it's not really that much different. It's just like a quarter of a second difference, probably. Nothing that anyone would notice except me. But yeah, price, boy. So you got so many options. Like the standard Paperwhite with ads is $159.99. Without ads, it's $179.99. The Paperwhite Signature is $109.99. And then the Colorsoft is $279.99, I think. I should say that I think most people who are just looking for kind of like something to read prose books on will do just fine on one of the lower tier Paperwhites. There's not really like a lot of call to jump into the Colorsoft unless you need something that demands color. But the Paperwhite Signature Edition is sort of the Paperwhite with all the same bells and whistles as the Colorsoft, just without color. And that could be of appeal to people who want sort of like the latest and greatest. I guess it's just a question really of like what kind of reader you are and what you're looking for. If you only have need for standard prose books, you're not looking for anything with color at all, you could really get away with one of the cheaper options in terms of the Paperwhite. I had the cheapest possible option from 2 years ago, had ads and everything. I hated the ads, but I did just fine and I enjoyed it greatly. Get the one without ads though. Who wants to see covers for some of these like terrible looking romance books? But if you are the kind of reader who has like sort of a broader library of things like comic books, cookbooks, kids books, whatever, and or you just want your library and your store to have color, so that might attract you more towards certain types of books, go for it. Is the $80 difference between like the best Paperwhite and the Colorsoft worthwhile? It just depends on who you are. For me, yes, I think so. I also think that the Colorsoft is going to be cheaper, especially come next Prime Day. That is probably almost certainly going to be the case. And if you can get it cheaper, totally worth it. I have not experienced any of the issues with yellow banding that people have complained about as of yet. Hopefully that continues. But Amazon has also said that they have addressed it on the product page itself. So we'll see if that turns out to be the case. But overall, the Colorsoft, I give it a thumbs up. I mean, it's got issues. And I do wish the screen was just a little more, well, I shouldn't have to fight it as much, but I still appreciate the flexibility. I still appreciate the ability to kind of dive into my comics library on one device rather than having to pull out the old iPad Pro or whatever in order to enjoy the things that I enjoy from the other side of my reading life. I will just say, as a device, the Colorsoft works great. And if it is the kind of thing you're looking for, buy it with confidence. I don't know what you guys think about e-readers and what kind of e-readers you're carrying, but let me know in the comments. Would love to talk with y'all about this. Thanks for diving in with me on sort of an unusual video, and we'll be back next week with another really cool book that I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time. See you then. Keep on reading.